What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome to Gunfighter Life, where we talk about gunfighting, tactics, guns, ballistics, proper use of force, all manner of things, the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. What are we going to talk about today? Survival 22s. I've been doing a couple of top 5s. Today, it's going to be top survival 22s. I picked 5 for the main ones, but then the Patreons had a little side discussion. I had a side discussion with them, so there'll be some bonuses thrown in there. But for my initial picks is top 5 survival 22s. So, I hope you enjoy the episode on that real-world first-hand experience. God's blessed me to get me through a lot of things. A quick synopsis of that short version of today's bio. So I'm going to put that in. Hopefully you won't think it's too long, and then we'll get into the main topic. Bio. First and foremost, I am a Christian. That is number one in my life, serving God, following Jesus. Combat veteran, served in the United States Marine Corps and the Army. Also law enforcement veteran, private contractor, state rifle and pistol champion. Professional big game hunter and guide. If you feel called to support, check out Patreon. There should be a link in the show notes. With that, I am your host, Michael Melito, and I am blessed to serve you today. 22 for survival. For some people, the definitive survival weapon. Now I'm going to be fair and honest. Not for me. It would not be my one go-to gun. For an end-of-the-world gun, it would not be my one go-to long gun. Because I don't know why you'd limit yourself to one gun. I would think that you would want a long gun and a handgun. But it wouldn't be my one go-to long gun, and I've said that many times. For me, it would be a shotgun. But for many, it would be the 22. And situationally dependent, there may be some situations where I would want a 22. I think it would be my secondary go-to long gun if circumstances were more in favor of it. But I get the rationale why it would be many people's go-to survival long gun. Let me name a few. Lightweight. Mostly lightweight of the ammo. Now with all the other stuff I'm likely to be carrying for survival, food and water and shelter, fire starting ability, navigation, communications, there's only so much weight a man can carry, and I'm a man acquainted with rucking a lot of weight. I was in the U.S. Marine Corps Infantry. You might imagine I'm acquainted with carrying a large amount of weight on my back. There's a limit. Now, I said initially I like the shotgun, but look at what 100 rounds of shotgun ammo costs. Not in the less important cost of money, but in the more important cost of weight and space. 100 rounds of shotgun is quite weighty and large. 100 rounds of 22, by contrast, especially if it's packaged in a little teeny boxes, is you can hold it literally in your hand. I could carry, with all the other stuff, easily 100 rounds of shotgun, and I would argue that's probably enough, but maybe not. Maybe it's a long-term, I'm mobile and never returning and don't know about resupply. Maybe I want to carry more ammo. Really nothing common and available gives the advantage that the 22 long rifle does. It is lightweight. You could easily, in a, not even a great pack, just a normal pack, with a bunch of other stuff, carry 1,000 rounds of 22. That is the giant advantage, and why many people choose it for their survival option. Also, secondarily, but also important, the weight of the weapon. A .22 rifle is likely lighter than many other options. It's lighter than most shotguns. It's lighter than most centerfire rifles. I said most. There are exceptions. But in general, the weapon itself also is going to be light. It's a great small game harvesting tool, and the advocates of this will say, well, you can take large game with it, and certainly you can, with proper shot placement and reasonable distances. Plenty of deer have been shot with a .22. I'm not advocating you do that. I'm not saying it's ethical. I'm saying that you can't argue that it has happened and people have done it. Again, it's not my primary, but it would be probably my second choice. If you said, okay, your first choice is off the table for whatever reason, it would be a good option. So with that being said, what are my top picks for .22 survival rifles? Number 1, the Ruger 1022 Takedown. Now, the Ruger 1022 is almost unarguably the best common. You could get some custom, semi-custom stuff, but the best common .22 rifle. It has kind of won that race. It is well out in front, and I think deservedly so. I still have my Ruger 1022 that I had my mom buy me at Walmart long before I was old enough to buy guns at Walmart. I still have it, still shoot with it, still train with it. It is a phenomenal gun. It's still running. I have a second one that's a takedown. And unlike a lot of takedown designs, I don't think it's really a compromise. When I initially got it, I thought, okay, I'll get it and I'll try it. Maybe it won't be as accurate, as reliable, but it is. I think it's every bit as good as the regular version, and it takes down. So in a survival scenario, why wouldn't you? Now, a lot of people think of survival scenarios as like peeing in radiators and Red Dawn, but maybe not. Maybe it's a lot more mundane than that. You don't want to be walking around with a long gun for whatever reason. You want to put it in a pack. Maybe you want to be covert. You want to be gray man. You want to keep it in a duffel bag in the back seat. For lots of reasons, that takedown ability is important. And again, when you put it together, I think it's every bit as capable, reliable, and accurate as a regular Ruger 1022. 1022s are known for being reliable, at least as far as .22 semi-automatics go. They're kind of known for being a proven platform. They are very shootable, very reliable. They generally go long periods without maintenance. Now, 22s generally get pretty dirty when you shoot them, but even so, could I make this comparison? The Ruger 1022 is kind of the AK of the .22 rifle world. It's known for being forgiving of neglect and just kind of working and not breaking. Now, any mechanical thing can break, but as far as semi-automatic weapons go, the 1022 has a good and I think deserved reputation for that. They come with decent iron sights. I would recommend upgrading to maybe a good peep sight, or if you want an optic, one that doesn't take batteries. But unlike a lot of 22s that just have that much smaller, not as robust rail, the 1022s that have come out anytime recently have good optics mounting capability. That Ruger 1022 takedown, that's going to be my number 1 choice. It's my choice. Again, it's not my go-to long gun, but it is one. It is one of my truck guns. It is one that, if I had to cover long distances, I just had some family recently take a vacation and go to a very large metropolitan area, which I try to avoid, but they wanted me to go spend time with them. And I love my family, so I did. And I took that Ruger 1022 takedown because if something happened, I wanted to get out of there on foot and be able to carry a decent loadout, get back to my wife. For that, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but I EDC a handgun, and I carry a handgun. If I wanted a little bit more capability, I grabbed that Ruger 1022 takedown. It's a good choice for that. So again, I said it's not my go-to all the time, but in certain circumstances where I'm trying to get out of a large metropolitan area and cover long distances on foot, yeah, I think it's a fantastic choice. That's my choice, and I would feel like a hypocrite if I didn't make that my number 1 recommendation. I think that it is, at least for a factory option. The next one I think deservedly, because for a long time, Marlin was the rival to the Ruger. They were kind of duking it out for first place, right? They were in this race. And for a while, they were pretty close. The Marlin Model 60s and 70s versus the Ruger 1022. Well, that race has been won by the Ruger 1022, I think, unarguably. But the Marlins have a lot going for them. Some people prefer them. Marlin also made a takedown gun in the Marlin Papoose. Now, the Marlins also are known for being reliable, good guns. Maybe not as much so as the Ruger 1022, but they're a very good, capable 22. And the Marlin Papoose is the magazine-fed version of that. Box magazine, I should say. One was a tubular magazine fed the Marlin Model 60. But they made the Papoose that took a box magazine. Also semi-automatic. Also a takedown. Now, I don't think it's as good as the Ruger, which it's not in first place. It's in second place. Because I do think you give something up going to the takedown version of the Papoose. It doesn't have a legit forend. You're kind of just grabbing the barrel. Which in a 22, I don't think it's going to get hot enough to really be a safety concern. However, you do give up a little bit of shootability and ergonomics, I think. But you do get that takedown capability, and I do believe that it is lighter than the Ruger. It screws on with a barrel nut. I don't think the lockup and assembly is as good as the Ruger design, but it's still good. And once it's assembled, again, it's a good proven design. That Marlin semi-automatic version, I think, is only second to the Ruger 1022. It's a great platform. That Marlin Papoose is a great gun. So I think it deserves the number 2 place for survival 22s. The next one, maybe the most controversial on the list, but I think it's a good viable option. They've been around a while. They are good semi-automatic 22s. It is the Smith & Wesson 1522. The Smith & Wesson, to be more specific, M&P 1522. It is basically an AR made to scale in 22 long rifle. And as I've mentioned, pretty much any AR is a takedown. You take out 2 push pins and you can take it down. It doesn't quite go in half, but it gets much smaller, easily to stow. And for the people that are really familiar, there may be a generation growing up now where AR-15s and those type rifles are the only thing they've ever shot, the only thing they've ever run. They're veterans. They maybe grew up in a city and joined the military, and they didn't grow up hunting and, shooting targets out of the air with a pointing shotgun or, a well-balanced bolt-action hunting rifle or plinking with a 1022. Like, for them, when they think gun, they think AR-15. And for somebody that has that training and experience, it only makes sense to utilize that if they're going to pick a 22 for survival. Also, unless you're a gun connoisseur or a gun sommelier, now I can look at that and pretty easily say, hey, even at a distance, that's a 22. I know that's a 22. I can look at the bolt. I can look at the magazine. But most people that aren't gun connoisseurs and aren't gun sommeliers, to them that's an AR. That's a scary black rifle. And that may have certain advantages in certain applications. But it also has all the good ergonomics of the AR-15. And again, if that's what you're used to, if that's like the long gun that you know and that you're familiar with, that might be the best option for you. These are not new. They've been around for years. They come in all kinds of different patterns, in just a standard black. They come in like the more tan, cool guy looking options, which also tend to blend into most environments better. You can mount a white light, which you may decide you want to do for whatever reason. You can pretty much mount most of the things you can mount on a regular AR. You can put a good optic on it. And you can also use it as a training aid to your AR-15. And again, if you decide things get bad, you're bugging out, you're packing your ammo and everything on foot, this would be a good option. And again, you could put it in your pack, but if you wanted to be a hard target, it looks like an AR. And to all but the most discerning, for all intents and purposes, they're not going to know any better. And you can carry a lot more ammo. Now, settle down. I'm not saying that this is a better option for a fighting carbine than an actual AR. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you want to choose a 22 rifle for survival and you want to keep the ergonomics and the familiarity of that AR platform because that's what you know, like to you that's a rifle, then you may really give this one a look. There are other versions, but I think the Smith & Wesson M&P is a good value. It's made well. They've been around a long time and I haven't been aware of really any issues with them. Sure, it will jam and malfunction like pretty much any 22 can do. But again, there doesn't seem to be any fundamental flaw with the design. So that Smith & Wesson M&P 1522 I think makes the list. The next one, number 4, the M6 survival rifle. Now this one's, maybe you could argue it shouldn't be on the list because it's also a shotgun. But it's a survival long gun and it is a 22. It's technically a combination gun, so it's a rifle and a shotgun. Think of it like an over and under shotgun, like a fine sporting shotgun over and under design, except it's not a fine sporting shotgun. It's a lightweight, handy, kind of crude looking over and under 22 410. Now, they made other versions with different calibers, but we're talking about a 22 long rifle specifically today. It's a good design. It's lightweight. I do believe many of the versions you can carry extra ammo in the stock. But that M6 survival rifle, it was designed for survival, for the military. And although I probably shouldn't count for this episode, the ability to have 410 is not to be sneered at as far as medium game hunting with a slug. I grew up hunting with a 410. Yeah, 22 long rifle is absolutely a great small game tool, but it's a lot easier to shoot a running animal or a flying animal or an animal that just pauses for a second in a bush, like a quail or a dove before it takes off again, to get that snapshot with a 410 shotgun than with a 22. Also, there are a lot of really good defensive loads for the 410. There's buckshot, there's the disc loads, the PDX. There is that. So, and although I don't like the idea of a break open for this, at least you get 2 rounds. And one of those could be a decent defensive option. So I think the M6 should be on here. The next one, the AR-7. And now they're owned by Henry. They've been owned by many other companies. And for a lot of you guys, you may notice I don't generally have a lot of love for Henry, but I'm mentioning them here, so there we go. That company now is owned by Henry, the AR-7. AR, just like the AR-15, stands for Armalite. It's an older design. It's a semi-automatic 22 survival rifle. It is a takedown. It has a barrel nut where it screws on. Not the best design, but not a horrible design. They've been around a long time. Kind of the claim, well, there's a couple of claims to fame to this one. One, it carries that AR name. Another is that it stores in its own stock and it floats. So if you're, like, let's say doing a canoe trip, or a canoe is your bug out vehicle, or you live in a very aquatic environment, a very, let's say, maritime environment, something like that, a gun that floats in its own stock, that could be potentially the difference between you having a gun and not having a gun if you, let's say, tip your canoe. Now, one of the patrons pointed out that he's had several of these. I have owned none of these thus far in my life. He said they're not great for large volume shooting. I'll take him at his word on that. I would like to hear from some other witnesses on that, but he's saying that they're not great for high volume shooting. So if you're looking for a gun to take out and plink with and shoot all the time and also have for survival, I would probably go with the Ruger 1022. Again, they're known for that. If you wanted a gun that you're just going to zero and have in your pack, maybe do a little bit of training with, but maybe keep in your pack, maybe keep in the back of your vehicle, keep in the saddlebag on a horse, whatever the case is, and this appeals to you because it goes in its own stock, because it seals up, because it floats, and it's fairly lightweight. I do believe it's quite a bit lighter than the Ruger 10/22. And it is semi-automatic, box magazine fed, so it gives you a reasonable rate of fire. Now, none of these I don't think are a great defensive option, but I'm much more comfortable with a semi-automatic 22 than I am with not a semi-automatic 22 rifle for defense. Certainly, plenty of people have died on the wrong end of a 22 long rifle. That doesn't make it a great defensive choice, and I like the semi-automatic capability. And this has that, and it's lightweight. Just looking on their website, this is the Henry website, it says since 1959, the venerable AR-7 has been the choice of the U.S. Air Force pilots who need a small caliber rifle that they can count on should they have punch out over a remote area. And it does weigh 3.5 pounds looking at their website. That's pretty light, especially for a semi-automatic 22. That's going to be my number 5 pick. Now, I put this out in the Patreon chat before it came out, and they had their own ideas. They wanted members of the inner tribe there, the Patreon chat, they mentioned the Keystone Cricket. Very great Youth 22, lightweight. And I initially thought about those and ones like that. I actually own a Savage Rascal. I do believe that the Savage is a better design for this, at least, and I'll get into why in a minute. But I initially wrote these off for Survival 22 rifle because they're single shot. They are bolt action, but they're single shot. That doesn't meet a requirement for me for reasonable rate of fire. None of these are great defensive guns, but if this is what you have on you or what you have in your hands, it might be a defensive tool in a survival scenario. And for me, one round of 22, I'd certainly rather have it than not have it, but I would want something with a more reasonable rate of fire. On that, the Keystone Cricket, while it's a great gun and a great Youth 22, and I use them for 22, teaching young male and female shooters. The Keystone Crickets, you not only have to work the bolt every single time, and it's a single shot, you have to drop the round in, shut the bolt, but then you have to cock it. So it's not like you run the bolt, shoot one round, and run the bolt again and drop another round in. You have to run the bolt and then cock it, and then shoot it, and then unload it, and then reload it, and then shut the bolt, and then cock it. So it's kind of even slower than a normal single shot, or even a normal single shot bolt action. The Savage Rascal is very similar, although you don't have to cock it. So you can literally just run the bolt, drop a round in, run the bolt. So quite a bit more efficient than the Keystone Cricket. But either one, I think, really doesn't meet the requirements. There are a lot of really good bolt action 22s, but I really couldn't think of any that would make the top 5. And although these are really good 22s, for me, they don't meet what I would want in a survival 22, because I would want to be able to shoot more than one shot. Also, even just in hunting. If you're hunting for food, you may not need 10 rounds or 25 rounds in a semi-automatic 22 for hunting, but sometimes you do need 2 or 3 rounds. Sometimes you get the opportunity or 2 or 3 quail or doves or something like it. If you're shooting something to eat it, sometimes you need a follow-up shot so that animal doesn't get away. The whole point you're shooting it is to eat it in survival, and I like the ability for a follow-up shot. So either way, for me, they don't make it, but the Patreons mention them, and I actually do have a Savage Rascal, and I really like it, and I do take it out hunting for the challenge of it. I take it out hunting for the challenge because it's a single shot 22 that weighs almost nothing. So if I'm going out for like a hike and bringing the dog and I just want us to be able to get some small game, I really like it. And I like it for the challenge. I don't think I would want to rely on it as my go-to survival long gun. That said, it is really, really light. It weighs 2.66 pounds, looking up the specs on the Savage Rascal. That's pretty light. That's light enough that, let's say I was getting my EDC handgun and my shotgun, and I wanted another option to just throw in a pack that's light enough that I could put it in a pack with, let's say, 100 rounds of 22, and it would still be very lightweight. The cool thing about the bolt actions and the single shots is they'll also shoot the 22 shorts. Now, all of them will, they just won't cycle the action. So if I wanted a really quiet option without a suppressor and all that, I could also have that. And again, for me, they don't make like the top 5 for survival 22, but they were mentioned in the chat, and I think there's a lot of merit to that. And if other people think that that's a great option, then I thought I would mention it. I'm also going to mention one that I put in there as kind of the ultimate, but it's not like a mass production. It's a semi-custom. And it is a bolt action, but it's not a single shot bolt action. It uses a magazine. It uses the Ruger 10/22 magazine. And that's the Tactical Solutions Oahi. If you're familiar with the company Tactical Solutions, they're big in certain circles as far as like really good high quality 22 stuff. They make their own guns now. They make that Tactical Solutions Oahi. Oahi is a mountain range in Idaho. It's a bolt action 22. It's a takedown. It very much has a lot of parts compatibility, I do believe, with the Ruger 10/22, but instead of being a semi-auto, it's a bolt action, but not a single shot. It runs off the same magazines as the Ruger 10/22. You could run, let's say, Calibris or CB caps maybe, or something like that, assuming they fed out of the magazine. I think that they would, but you have that. They're not cheap, but they're really cool. They're really kind of minimalist bolt action, and everything I've ever had that Tactical Solutions made was just great quality. So if you're looking for like a high end, if it is going to be your one survival long gun and you want a really, really good one, you may look at that Oahi bolt action. A really cool gun. Anyway, those are some picks for the top survival 22 rifles. Obviously, there are 22 handguns, but that's probably outside the scope of this discussion. If you like this podcast, if you like this content, you want to be part of that insider chat, or you just want some extra content that goes out only to patrons, or you just want to support the ministry, the podcast, the message, there should be a Patreon link in the show notes. I am very humbled that you listen and give me some of your time, and it would be a great blessing if you considered becoming a patron. With that, the tactical tip of the day. Guns are not security blankies. You can't just get one and expect to be safe. You have to know how to use them. If you're looking at a good drill you can do with a 22, you might look at the U.S. Army qual. Not the normal one they do on the big range, but they have an alternate qual that you shoot on paper at 25 meters. You may consider running that qual yourself with your 22. You can buy those targets. They're not overly expensive. You can run that. It's a good marksmanship training drill. You can run it with your AR. If you want, you could also run it with your 22. You might find that a little bit more valuable training than just shooting at a circle target. Now, that's good for zeroing and stuff like that, but after you're zeroed, maybe put some time pressure on it and run that U.S. Army paper qual. 25 meters on reduced size targets. And that's your tactical tip of the day. Get some actual tactical training with that 22, especially if you think you may rely on a 22 in an actual survival scenario. With that, the tactical verse of the day. Proverbs 12:27. The lazy do not roast any game, but the diligent feed on the riches of the hunt. I would submit there's nothing unbiblical or unchristian or against Judeo-Christian values with hunting. We just read that verse. How about this one from Leviticus 17:13? Whatever man of the children of Israel or of the strangers who dwells among you who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. There's nothing wrong as a man. There's nothing morally wrong or objectionable to slaying a beast with your own hands and eating it, provided it's the right thing done in the right way, as God lays out in the Bible. Don't be afraid to get your hands a little bit dirty, a little bit bloody, and put food on the table. Be that provider and protector for those under your headship as a man. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.